This episode has been brought to you by the National Advertising Challenge.
Are you responsible for your brand's voice? Do you love big ideas? NAC is a brief-based competition where brands ask for creative ideas to help solve their biggest marketing challenges. Brands write the brief, we send them out to top creative teams across the country, leading creative directors judge the concepts. You own all the ideas. Learn more about partnerships at nationaladvertisingchallenge.com.
In America, there were these rules in place, what was called the financial interest and syndication rules, or loosely called the FinCin rules. Because the networks were so powerful, there was a time in the 70s where the three networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, they had 90% of the audience. So Washington decided, the FCC decided, it wouldn't be fair if those networks owned their content in prime time. They can license it, but they can't own it. That would be too dominant. So Hollywood basically became a town where one end of the town were the makers and sellers of content, the studios, Warner's and Universal and Disney. And on this side of town were the buyers, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And the guys on one side of town sold to the guys on the other side of town. And then cable came in the mid 70s, and by the mid 80s, cable was starting to get, more and more relevant. And by the mid 90s, cable was becoming so relevant that the network audience had gone from like 90% down to less than 50%. So the networks lobbied Washington and said, look, these rules, they're really out of date now. We don't have the power we used to have. And so you really ought to, get rid of them. And they did. So what immediately happened is Disney bought ABC, and soon thereafter, Universal bought NBC, or Universal and NBC merged. And of course, CBS today is part of Viacom and Paramount. So things completely changed. Well, that happened. So in, I forget I think it was 1998, 88 or 89, I forget. A guy named Anthony Zeiker, who had never been part of a TV show. He was driving a tram in Vegas, but in his mind, speculating what a good TV series might be. And he spent a few nights with police officers in Vegas, sitting in the back of the car, observing, and wrote out on a 2-page summary what he thought would be an interesting thing, which is how the crime scene is really a character. When they show up and they put that yellow tape around and trying to understand what happened in that crime scene. Anyway, so he wrote it up as a show called CSI. And he had actually spec'd a feature script to the Jerry Bruckheimer company in a prior year or two. So he sent it to the Jerry Bruckheimer company, and they said, oh, that's interesting. In fact, a guy named Jonathan Littman, a very able executive at the Bruckheimer company, read the 2 pages and said, hey, this is pretty good. The Bruckheimer company at the time had a first look deal with Disney. So they went to Disney and said, we have a great idea for a TV show. And Disney said, oh, well, we just bought ABC. So let's go pitch that. Let's go show it to them. So they go show it to ABC, and ABC passes. And Disney says, well, okay, well, they don't want it, so let's go pitch CBS. They go pitch CBS, and CBS says, well, this is great. Okay, we'll buy it, meaning we will pay the money towards writing a script. So they pay Anthony to write a CSI script, and the script is actually quite good. And they decide in that year, which they do every year in January, as the networks do, and they still do it this way somewhat. They pick, of the 100 scripts they've developed that year, they pick 10 or 15 to shoot as pilots. So CBS says to Disney, good news, of the many scripts we've developed, we want to develop the CSI script. And Disney says, great. So they go in, that's when the real deal has to get made, because if you're going to shoot a pilot, it's going to cost millions of dollars. That's just going to hopefully lead to a series order, which is going to cost many millions of dollars. So that's when they start negotiating, and they couldn't make a deal. Because having bought ABC, Disney had this attitude, which they had not so much vis-a-vis CBS, vis-a-vis the town. They were kind of saying, we got our own network now. We don't have, we don't have to follow your lead, buyers. If you don't like it, screw you. We're going to go, we'll make stuff at our own network. In the years that followed, the initial years that followed the elimination of the FinCEN rules, there was tension, more so than ever, among these studios that were buying up the networks, how they dealt with other networks, because it was a dream come true. After years of begging and groveling to make a sale to a network, to now have your own network was a very fulfilling experience. Anyway, so CBS called me one day and said, we're having and I had produced a lot for CBS in the 90s, mostly, almost entirely in the movie and miniseries space, and quite successfully. Very high rated things and lots of award nominations, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so CBS called me and said, we're having the damnedest time with ABC or with Disney on this show. And we've now got to a point where we can't make a deal. There's too much, and never in the history of television, or certainly US television, had there ever been an order for a pilot as between a network and a studio where a deal didn't get made. Never happened. Never, ever, ever happened. It's happening now because of the Cold War created by the elimination of the FinCEN rules and the different strutting and attitude that now the studio might have towards the buyer. In any event, they say to ABC, well, if we can't make a deal, do you mind if we go elsewhere? And Disney said, sure. They're going to take Disney's project and find a different partner. And they came to me. I read it, loved it, and the rest is history. As the book that talks about CSI says, it was, I forget the line, but it was written by the writer from the New York Times, I forget his name, who writes a lot about the media space. He said it was the most valuable decision Peter Sussman ever made. Probably true.